Welcome to GenXAdulting. We took a little bit of a break between Thanksgiving and Christmas, as a lot of people do. And we were busy with all the holiday preparations. So we're back at it.
Yep. Yep.
And today is going to be the first in our series of GenX Speaks, where we interview different GenXers about their life story.
We also have the Gen Z and the Boomer Speaks.
Well, no, we have the Gen Z Women series.
Okay.
And then we have the Boomer series.
Okay.
And GenX Speaks is called that because typically Gen X has been known to not share much about their life.
Yeah.
We're stay to ourselves, don't bother others, don't get involved in things, live our lives, and help if needed. But we kind of mind our business, and we're not really out there sharing. So this gives a platform to Gen Xers to actually share, maybe for the first time ever, their life story.
And today I think we're going right in on you.
Yes, I'm going to be the first in the Gen X Speaks series. I'm going to share my life story.
All right.
And I will say that it would be helpful to the listener if they listen to the episode that's before this one, which is my mom's episode.
Yeah.
So I would either listen to that episode before you listen to this episode, or I would go back and listen to that episode when you're done with this one, because it will give so much insight into the background of what I'm speaking about. It does parallel a lot of what I am going to speak about. And I think it would just, the listener would find it very interesting.
So before we jump into, say, the chronological order of your life,
Mm-hmm.
have you thought about that episode a bit, and has it helped drive to want to go down this path, or what are your thoughts on that whole episode?
Well, reflecting on my mom's episode, I have so much admiration for her and what she shared. Especially for the boomers, they don't talk a lot about, they don't go and get into the deep layers.
Yeah.
They stay very surface because that's their generation. That's how they were raised. And again, mental health wasn't really discussed for them. Therapy wasn't a big thing, but it doesn't come naturally to them to dig down into the layers. So I really commend my mom for doing that, because she went really deep. She shared a lot of intimate things that happened in her life. I found it very riveting. And so I'm very grateful to her for sharing that. As far as, did it trigger me to want to share my life? I think it was kind of like, you know what? She did it, so I should be able to do it too. If she was brave enough to share her story, then I should also be brave enough as well. Because it does take courage to share stuff, especially when it's my background. There's going to be some pretty crazy things that y'all are about to hear. And so it takes some courage to put that out there. And my motivation behind it is that I think that there's going to be others that will be able to relate to some of what I share. And as always, I hope it helps even if it's one person, not feel so alone in either what they went through in their childhood or what they're currently going through. So everything we share is to connect people, so people feel seen, whether you're a listener or whether you're a guest.
Seen or heard, yeah.
Seen and heard. And and I also try to tell, especially our daughter, we actually just were having a conversation about, sticking up for yourself and maybe your past self. And so for me, this is honoring my past self, and especially the child that I was. I feel that she deserves for her story to be told, if that makes sense.
Who's your mom's or
my child, my inner child?
Yeah. Oh, you're in. Okay.
Gotcha. The child that I was.
Yeah.
I think that, she deserves a voice.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into it. So when and where were you born, and your parents?
Well, again, so a lot of my parents' stuff you will hear if you go and listen to my mom's episode, but I was born in 1971. I was born in Pontiac, Michigan. My parents met in Kansas City when my dad was in medical school and my mom was a flight attendant. He's Armenian. My mom is white as white as white. I
Yep.
think
We
she's
learned that
German.
she's a mutt.
Yeah, she's blonde, blue-eyed, and my dad's very dark. Um, they got married in Michigan, in Dearborn, I believe. They started their family, and their first baby died. She only lived, I thought it was 12 hours, but if I think back to my mom's episode, I think she said it was either 24 or 48. I can't remember, but
Yeah.
she was basically born without a completed skull.
Yep.
It was her neural tube, I think. Now they'd call it neural tube defect, but and other things were going on. So she was born March 10th, and then I was actually born exactly a year later
Yep.
on March 10th. So, and I was fine. I was healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And then 11 months later, my sister Mary Beth was born, and she also had mental and physical disabilities. She was anencephalic. She basically wasn't expected to live. They did a surgery where they did have to remove part of her brain. And I don't think that anyone thought she was going to make it. And she did.
Mm-hmm.
But her quality of life, there's really nothing there. I mean, it's like almost like a baby and the mind of a baby in an adult body at this point.
Yeah.
Ironically, she's healthy as a horse. But
Yeah.
so I would say the first baby was the beginning of my parents' marriage cracking.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was born and there was hope.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mary Beth was the nail in the coffin of the marriage is not going to survive.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think at the time it was assumed that the issue was with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom did end up, while they were in this process of the marriage kind of falling apart, she popped up pregnant again. And she does share this in her episode, but
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
did have an abortion
Yeah.
because of the utter trauma. Because I remember this had all happened before she was even, I think, 24 years old or
Yeah.
25 years old. So there was a lot going on.
Yeah.
And so when I think back to my childhood and how it started, I would say I started in fight or flight probably at 1.5, because when they brought Mary Beth home, the trauma would have been in the home,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then the downfall of the marriage would have been in the home. So even when you're little, you're still absorbing that energy of what's
Yeah.
going on between your parents. If there's a child that's needing extra care and all that, your mom is still she's in a state of trauma, and the child is going to absorb that.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was miraculous and did the best she could, so she didn't do anything wrong. It's just that it's a result of the circumstances. So,
Well, I chuckle just because
Yeah.
that's so insane in some respects, in that we can talk in those terms today,
right.
but back then there was no concept of your child's experiencing trauma because your marriage is falling apart and there's tension, right? That
Right.
just wasn't acknowledged.
No.
And the world's advanced enough to where you can talk about it in those terms, but it wasn't like that. You've
Right.
come to that discovery, I guess, and we'll kind of get there.
Yeah. No, yeah, especially back in 1971, 72,
Yeah.
73. Absolutely not. There was none of that.
Yeah.
So, they ended up getting divorced. Before the divorce, my mom had found a place to take care of Mary Beth because she needed 24-hour care around the clock. And so they found a really great place. My dad was always strong about he would never put her in an institution or anything. It was a safe,
Mhm.
good place, good quality place. So Mary Beth went there, and my mom took me and moved back to Oregon, where I'm from,
Mhm.
where my mom's from, I should say. She went back to Portland, where she's from, where her side of the family is. And I think for those few years, from the time I was probably 2.5 to 5, maybe, I think my mom was in complete survival mode.
Mhm.
I do think she had a nervous breakdown during those years because there's parts of those years she can't remember.
Mhm.
Just for those couple years, I think she was obviously traumatized.
Yeah.
And thankfully, my Auntie Judy and my Uncle Doug got her through that.
Well, traumatized in a fight for survival as a single mom
Yeah,
in a time and period where being a single mom, I'm not saying it's easy today. I'm definitely not saying that,
right,
but there's probably more resources, there's more
right.
understanding, there's more of a system around supporting that. But when you guys are doing it, I don't think those institutions existed.
Not like they do now.
No,
Not at all. So we had
they
family,
had family.
and that's who my mom relied on. And they were wonderful. And I spent a lot of my time with my cousins, Wendy and Jason. And so that was the survival period. And then during that time, when my mom and I were my mom was trying to pull herself together, my dad married my stepmom. So they got divorced, and my dad married my stepmom pretty much right away, I believe.
Do you, do you have memories of feeling like you were surviving too, or are you really more defining probably the experience your mom was having? Because I don't have thoughts of surviving as a kid, but did you, was that part of your psyche or existence?
So I was so young that, like I said, I think I was in fight or flight, but
Mhm.
I can't consciously tell you at the 2.5 to 5 year mark. I can't consciously tell you of anything specifically traumatic,
Mhm.
except there's a feeling of stress.
Mhm.
Like when I think I feel the stress, I can't
Yeah.
tell you what it is. So I just think it was a feeling of stress.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I saw my dad sporadically during those years. I think he came out maybe once. And then my mom, I think, would fly back to Michigan to bring me to see him.
And she mentioned that.
Yeah, we would go back still.
Yeah.
During this time when she's trying to pull together,
Yeah.
she's also still having to go back to the place of where the trauma happened so my dad can see me. So it's almost like she probably would take 2 steps forward in her life and then 2 or 3 steps back repeatedly for those couple years.
What's interesting is when you've told me your background over the years and different stories, it was you would fly back by yourself.
No, no, we're not there yet.
No, I know,
Yeah.
I don't think until she brought it up. I don't know if that was that part of your memories? Was that news to you, or did you remember that? Or
No, I mean, I kind of knew we must have gone back because it's not like he wouldn't have not seen me for 2 years or whatever. So I think I knew theoretically we must have done that. I don't
Mhm.
remember flying with her, but
Yeah, yeah,
she obviously was doing it. So think about the state she must have been in, flying to Michigan, and
yeah,
I'm sure when we were there, she probably saw Mary Beth.
yeah. She mentioned she did.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's
And his
just,
sisters and cousins or whatever, his side of the family, which I found interesting when she talked about it, and you'd mentioned it before, but the Armenian culture is very strong. She
yes.
was not part of it, so she was part of it, and then you guys left, and then she'd go back into it, and I don't know if she just wasn't part of it.
Well, I think there was so much trauma. Think about it. There's trauma for the whole family, right?
Mhm.
There was probably trauma when the first baby was born. That's your first. When losing a child is utterly and horribly traumatic. Um, so my grandparents had to go through that.
Yeah.
My dad's sisters and brother,
His aunt.
yeah,
Yeah,
his aunt.
yeah,
Everyone had to go through that. So then I'm born. So everyone had hope again, not
yeah.
just my parents, right? And yes, in the Armenian culture, especially, children are, you get married, you have children.
Mhm.
It's very much celebrated. It's a value. Oh, it's a wonderful value. But and then when Mary Beth was born, I think that just was so heartbreaking for the whole
Took
family.
the air out of the balloon.
Everything, and especially for them knowing my dad had to go through that. And I think at the time, it was thought that it was probably an issue with my mom. So
Yeah.
I'm sure her going back, you've you're not, I don't think they ostracized her at all. They always
Mhm.
were good to her and loved her, but who knows what was going on
Yeah,
during
yeah,
that time. You know what
yeah,
I mean? So she was constantly probably reopening a wound.
yeah, yeah.
Keep in mind, like I said, my parents got divorced and he married my stepmom.
Yeah.
So she's going back and he's starting a new life with someone else,
Mhm.
right? And we didn't really touch on that
No.
because, you know, she, that wasn't her story to tell, but that was going on, right? Well, when he married my stepmom had a son from her first marriage, who I think was like when, or 1.5 or something when my dad entered his life. So my dad is his dad.
Yeah.
And, they're very, you know, like I think he might've ended up adopting him, but, so she had her son from her first marriage. And then my dad and her had a child who was born mentally and physically disabled.
Yeah. Yep.
Andrea.
Yep.
So I think for my dad, then he knew it wasn't my mom.
Yeah.
And I think for him, it probably destroyed him, right? So how do you come back from something like that? Yeah, I don't know. I don't think you ever come back with from something like that. And even though he was older than my mom, he was like almost 5 years older than my mom. He was still young.
Yeah.
He was in his late 20s, early 30s when this was going on. So he was still a very young man. So it warped him too. It warped my mom. It warped him. And I'm sure it warped my stepmom, right?
Yeah,
because she probably thought she's about to have this glorious life and she loved him and he's a doctor and things are going to be wonderful. And then this happened. So everyone got thrown for a loop. So that was going on. They ended up divorcing. And I think there's very few marriages that survive stuff like that. But once I hit 5, I was able to fly back alone to see him. And he would fly me back first class. And back then, first class, you got a tray with food. And you even got these little crystal. See, I remember
Your little
this.
salt and pepper
I remember
shakers.
this.
Yeah.
I got to go on first. They would assign a flight attendant to me. She was like there to, you know, she had to keep track of me.
Yeah.
And they would make sure I think I was always in bulkhead, which is the very first row. And the little crystal salt and pepper shakers, I would have them on my tray flying out to Michigan and back. And I took them.
Yep.
So my mom had quite the collection.
Yeah.
And I would give them to my mom. And I just remember that. But so I would go see him, and I think I would stay in Michigan for maybe 3 weeks. I'm not sure, my mom would know more, but at least 3 weeks. And so he's divorced. So I spent all that time with my aunts, and I would bounce between aunts, his 2 sisters and then his aunt. And I got to spend all that time with my cousins, which I loved. So to me, it was fun. You know, I was excited to go out there because I got to hang out with my cousins.
Yeah.
And I had so much fun with them. My Aunt Chris had a pool. My Aunt Doe had a pool. My Aunt Diana belonged to a pool club, and they would bring me. Thank God for them. Like, they raised me when I was there, and they were wonderful to me. And my Aunt Izzy, my dad's aunt, my Aunt Izzy would take care of me. So I was close to all of these cousins and all of my aunts and uncles. And I would spend time with my grandfather, my grandpa Barkey, and he ended up remarrying, and I spent time with both of them.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And I would spend, I wouldn't spend the night with my great-grandparents, my Armenian great-grandparents, which would have been my grandma Satanig's parents, but I would go and spend the day with them.
Why did he remarry? Did your grandmother pass away?
Oh, yeah. My grandma passed away when I was, I'm going to say it wrong. I think I was 6.
So you were young.
I was young, and that was a blow to the whole family, and to my dad. It was a blow, and my grandpa did not remarry for a very long time.
Yeah.
Like I was much older. He didn't remarry for a very long time. So, and then also my dad was an ER doc. So I was also, when he had me, I was at the hospital. So all of these nurses and administrators would take care of me, and they were wonderful. They doted on me. Everyone was wonderful to me. I was very fortunate during that time to be surrounded by such good people, between family and my dad's, the people he worked with. I was very fortunate. And I think my dad lived in an apartment or something. So those first years, like 5, 6, that feels very positive back in Michigan. And then I also would sometimes spend time eventually at my stepmom's house, I would spend a few nights there with my stepbrother and Andrea.
Mhm.
And that those memories aren't as good,
Yeah.
and so I think if I think back to that, I think what happened is, let's say, as anyone, there may be some insecurities or resentments or whatever about a first marriage, a first life, right? And the children that result from that. Maybe there's some insecurities. I don't necessarily think my dad helped um, calm that down.
Mhm.
I don't think he,
He didn't necessarily make everything okay all the time,
right. I don't think, yeah,
right?
I don't think so. And I think he had a lot of moving parts in his life.
Yeah.
And I don't think he wanted those moving parts to intersect.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so when you don't want that to happen, sometimes you play people against each other.
Yeah.
And so if somebody's feeling like I don't know. I don't know if there was manipulation going on or not, but I didn't.
Do you think there was a playing people against each other, or more, I have these worlds I don't want to intersect, so I'm just going to leave out some details and just kind of
I don't know.
we'll navigate this and see
I don't
where it
know.
goes.
I don't know because I never felt totally welcome, and I know things were said to me. I think he had a lot going on. My dad.
Yeah.
I think my dad had some ladies that he,
Yeah.
I think he had a few different ladies, and he didn't necessarily want, those ladies to communicate with each other.
Think about that. If he's got various ladies that he doesn't want to communicating, and meanwhile his wife is taking care of the stepdaughter,
his ex-wife, I think at the time.
Yeah, his ex, whatever that is. There's some resentment, I think.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. That's what I mean. I think, who knows? I don't know what was being said to her.
Yeah.
I don't know what was being said to my stepbrother. And I know what was being said to me, and it wasn't always nice about them.
Yeah.
So
well, plus they had their own issues from divorce, not having a relationship with the original real father, right?
Right.
So there's
stuff going on, right?
Yeah, shit's happening.
So I'm walking into, sometimes it felt like a pressure cooker. And then I also, when I was born, my dad did make an effort as far as making me feel like I was the main girl in his life, just like you do with Kaya. Like, no, his daughter, love me. When he would send me cards or we would talk on the phone. And so when you feel that way, and you probably, who knows, when I was younger, I probably came off as, I don't know, maybe.
Oh, you're daddy's girl.
Daddy's girl, right?
Yeah, I'm special.
Because I didn't know any different. So maybe that came off wrong when I'm walking into that home, if that makes sense.
Well, the other piece is you leave and you come back, and when you come back, you're special.
Right.
You're special.
Right.
Jealousy would absolutely happen, right? That's just a natural thing.
I think that's what happened. Yeah. And I don't think my dad would have been the best at
he didn't
managing that.
Yeah.
So, and maybe at times made it worse. So that was going on. When I was really young, I didn't spend a ton of time there. That was more as I got a little older. But so while that was going on in Michigan, my mom decided to move to Northern California. She needed a change. Mm-hmm. And she had friends down there. So we moved to Northern California. So to like the Sunnyvale area. And that was when she really went back to work, which is when the mid 70s, women were really starting to enter the workforce. And it's where institutionalized daycare started really becoming prominent. Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't just some lady down the street watching your kids.
No, that's our generation.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are the generation where daycare became institutionalized. And we're the first ones to go through it.
Right. So I was one of those kids, right?
Yeah.
And so I would go to preschool, and then from there go to aftercare. They call it now. Then I don't know what they called it. And then I would go to kindergarten, and I'd go to the daycare section. It was all in the same building. Mm-hmm. But I was one of the last ones to always get picked up. And it's not at fault of my mom's. It was just her hours. But it sucked. It was the worst because...
How old were you again?
So this would have been preschool through kindergarten.
Okay, so 4 or 5-ish, 3, 4, 5-ish.
Probably like 5, 6. Yeah, like 4, 5, 6. I think we
Okay.
moved. We started moving. We were down there. So I remember standing, holding on to the cyclone fence, watching the
Oh my
parking lot,
God. It's like a
waiting.
puppy dog.
I know, waiting for her yellow pacer. Probably I don't. Only Gen X knows what that is. To come into the parking lot, and I can still remember the sounds of when you're the one of the last kids getting picked up, because you go from noise of children playing, and
Hmm.
then all of a sudden the noises, it's quiet.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's like
Slowly gets quieter.
it slowly gets
Yeah,
quieter, and it's like you and like 2 other
yeah,
kids.
yeah.
And then the people that work there start to pack everything up and put everything away. It's an eerie
You
feeling.
know, it's funny. I'm picturing some Hollywood movie where that's just happened. I can picture it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This
Me
sad
too.
scene, right? It's like,
Yeah, no, it goes from your plane, all of a sudden all your friends got picked up and you're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
where's my mom? So that was not enjoyable at all. And again, no fault to my mom. It just was how it was. Like, she was a single mom. My dad was in Michigan. We were in California. It's just how it was.
I think though, to your point, how it was, that's probably the essence of this episode in some ways, in terms of other people relating, because I guarantee you there's other people who went through that and really haven't touched on it or talked about it or
Right.
acknowledged it, right?
Maybe.
You
Yeah.
know?
Because I'll tell you, it was one of the motivators to why I stayed home and I didn't go
Yeah,
to work.
yeah,
You know, I have a lot of reasons for why I stayed home and didn't go to work and I raised
yeah,
my kids.
yeah,
And a lot of it is healing my own trauma,
yeah. Well, not
you
wanting your
know,
kids to go through the same experience.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah. That sounded selfish, but no, I didn't want them to go through the same thing. So anyways, so then she met this guy. She did date off and on. We had some crazy
those are some
times.
classic
Oh yeah, she talks
stories.
about it in the other episode, but one of the guys tried to burn our house down and threw rocks through our window. It was fun. So anyways, she ended up meeting this guy Rob, who became my first stepdad. They were living together and my dad said that he didn't want me in a house where she's living with a guy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So she married him.
yeah.
So
That's such a classic part of that.
So they got married down in the courthouse, I think in Sunnyvale. I was in the wedding. Well, it was at the courthouse. It was just like me, I
That's
think.
awesome.
He was really nice. My memories of him are he was really nice. He drove a Volkswagen bus. He had kind of like this salt and pepper afro-ish hair and a beard. Um, he was just like this nice guy. Thank God.
1970s California, white socks
Yeah.
with stripes
I
type
don't
of
know
thing.
about that, but
You know?
so late 70s,
Yeah,
Northern
yeah,
California, Bay Area vibe.
yeah.
There was only like one thing I remember that was inappropriate, but I don't think it was meant that way. But nowadays it would be 100%
Hmm.
viewed wrong. I think I was in first or second grade and I would shower with him.
Yeah, that's
And
probably,
that's not appropriate.
yeah,
And it wasn't regularly,
yeah,
but randomly I would take showers with him. Nothing happened.
yeah,
Nothing happened, but it's not appropriate.
yeah,
And I don't know if that's that Northern California vibe or if it was inappropriate and just didn't go further past that. I don't know, right?
yeah,
But that's one thing I look back on. That's one of those things where you're like, okay, that's not normal.
yeah, yeah.
But nothing happened other than that. And it was not regularly. So I would say out of that whole time, oh my gosh, one Gen X thing people could relate to is there was I might have already talked about this in another episode, but there was like a baseball diamond that was, I don't know how far of a walk. It felt like a long time because I was in like first grade, but I would walk to it and I would talk to the lady that worked the vending, like where you sold candy
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
it was probably not just like for baseball games. It was probably like a rec park
Like the
center.
vending shack type of thing.
Yeah, that probably was open all the time.
Hmm.
And she said if I picked up litter, she'd give me free candy. I think I was 6 or 7. Like I was 6 or 7
Yeah,
because we weren't there when I was 8. And I would spend time picking up litter and hand it in and I'd get free candy and then I'd walk home and I would go along a relatively busy road because I remember
yeah,
walking down the neighborhood road and then getting on a busy road, like the sidewalk along a busy road. That's so Gen X.
yeah.
That would not happen now.
I think, isn't that when kids started showing up on milk cartons because they were missing?
Not yet.
Was that a little bit later?
That's like, I think that's more like 1980 that started, or
Okay.
but yeah, like, but
Yeah,
I mean, there
that's
was no back then. That's how it was.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember going into my neighbor's house and talking to her, just the neighbor, the lady,
Yeah, yeah.
and she'd give me cookies,
That's hilarious.
and I would just hang out with her and
I mean,
come
that
back.
makes sense.
You know,
We interacted with neighbors like that when I was a kid.
yeah,
It's just I don't know. It definitely doesn't happen now.
we would never have let our
No,
6 or
no way.
7-year-old go into the
Wouldn't let my
neighbor's adult.
14-year-old
I know.
go. I'd be like, what the hell's going on over there?
I know.
Yeah.
But the things that we were allowed to do, because there was no fear built in, because people didn't know yet. It was going on.
Yeah.
People didn't know.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Well, the milk
you know.
cartons hadn't come out yet to tell everybody.
Yeah, to
people's
let
kids
everybody
are
know,
being
hey, this is
stolen.
going on.
Yeah.
So, no, I think back to those times. I'm like, wow, there's some risky behavior there. But it wasn't just me. I know other Gen Xers had the similar experiences. I remember being in like those big water pipes collecting
Yeah.
tadpoles and just on my own, just
Yeah.
you're on your own, and
I
then
think
just showing back up at home.
I think that's a universal thing.
Yeah.
You see the memes. We all talk about
Yeah.
how we knew we had to go home because the street lights are coming on.
Yeah.
So that's nothing too crazy.
Yeah, it's nothing too crazy. So, while that was going on, where she's married to my first stepdad, we're living in Northern California, doing the Northern California life. I would still go back every other Christmas and then every summer to Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I was still spending time with my aunts and my cousins, and sometimes with my stepmom, with my great grandparents and all that. But then my dad also was dating somebody, and she was wonderful. I have wonderful memories with her. But what I didn't totally realize was that he also was still, I think, involved with my stepmom.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I'm young. I'm like 7.
Yeah.
And
I think still trying to get with your mom when he would see her, right?
I believe maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he didn't really see her that much during that time because she was married.
That
So, yeah, I
doesn't
know.
matter.
But I still think they did see each other a ton. But when they did, yes, I'm sure. Yes. So, I have memories of spending time with his girlfriend, and then we would leave, and he, on the way to going to my stepmom's house, he would say, you can't talk about what we just
That's
just
awesome.
were and who we were with.
Yeah.
And so that's where I learned about like lying and stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that I didn't totally understand that until then.
How old were you again?
I think I want to say I was 6 and 7 when that was
Yeah,
going
okay.
on.
Yeah.
Well, that was the beginning of that. Then as I got older, I
Got really good at
I
it.
got really good at it. But one time I messed up.
Oh, really?
I did.
I don't know if you've told me that.
I don't know if I have. We were at a restaurant with my stepmom, I believe. Or maybe with the girlfriend. We were with one of them.
Yeah.
I can't remember now who it was. And I said
Awesome.
something about what we had done
Mhm.
with, not necessarily literally with the other person, but we happened to be there.
Yeah.
And whoever the woman was, it was either the girlfriend or my stepmom, got mad.
Mm-hmm.
And then he pulled me out of the restaurant and like laid into me for
I think I do remember you telling me about that.
spilling the beans.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, which it was not intentional. I was
Yeah.
just a kid, so I remember that. So that was a bit traumatic, and just, learning.
Was that the first time you think he ever disciplined you, or like
got upset with me? That was the first time
memory?
he got upset with me
Yeah.
that I can remember. Yeah. And it was more probably out of total frustration because he
Yeah,
knew
yeah.
he now had a whole situation to deal with.
Yeah.
So like he never punished me.
Yeah.
But so then I got good at it after that.
Yeah.
Like I shut my mouth, and it's
That's
crazy.
Awesome.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
So that's going on. And then after living in Sunnyvale, Northern California for a couple years, my mom wanted to move back up to Portland.
You needed a change.
Needed a change. And so we moved back up. My stepdad came up with us, and we moved to Aloha, Oregon. I was in 3rd grade, starting another school. There's a pattern of moving and starting schools that starts. And they ended up getting divorced. But that's the beginning of
Mhm.
my latchkey life, because my mom was working, he was working, and then they got divorced. But I wasn't going to daycare. I
Or
was
what
going coming home.
what age would you say you were
This
at
is
this
third
point?
grade, so
Third grade,
8. Is
8
that
or
8,
9,
9?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I liked that because I did not like daycare.
Oh, the
I loved
being
having
home
my
alone?
key.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think I would get off the bus and I'd let myself into the house. And that's when I remember
Mhm.
picking up the house, doing the dishes, setting up the coffee for the next day. If a plant needed water, nothing, not heavy cleaning, but just, picking things up. If I had any homework, which back then I don't even remember us having homework in third grade, but doing it. And then I would go out and I would play with my friends until my mom came home. And so that was the beginning of my latchkey kid
You
experience.
know,
And that was very, very normal. Very normal.
I'd heard of the term latchkey, but I never connected the dots. It was you had a key because no one was home,
Right.
so you could open the door and let yourself
Yeah.
in. Yeah.
Yeah. And I kept mine in my backpack, but you could wear it around your neck
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
And I remember the rule was I always called my dad when I walked in the door. I locked the door. So I'd call him at work, let him know I'm home.
Mhm.
I'd call my mom. So they knew I was in touch with both my parents.
Yeah.
But I had freedom. Like I could go out in the neighborhood and play with, no one home. And,
Yep.
and then, so they got divorced. And, so I finished out my third grade year there. And then we moved to Beaverton, to another house,
Mhm.
to another school. And that would have been fourth grade. And it was just her and I. And then I was kind of bouncing between Michigan and Oregon. Same life going on in Michigan. It's very consistent, bouncing between the aunts, the cousins, whoever my dad was seeing, my stepmom. And then it was just my mom and I. We were back to just the two of us again. And that was, we were the two of us. Then she got married. Now we're back to the two of us. And I remember in sixth grade, I had one of my most favorite teachers, Mr. Hausman. He was so great because he let you play music in the classroom. So I would
Mhm.
bring my 45s, and I wasn't like the DJ of the class, I would say,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think I'm the one that always brought the most records, and we would play them. And he was great. And him and my mom actually went on a couple
I
dates.
know. I love that part of it. That cracks me up.
She was a wild one.
Our teacher was Mr. Spice. Our fifth grade
Mr.
teacher,
Spice.
Mr. Spice, would let us bring in records and
Yeah, it's
stuff.
cool.
Yeah.
I think there should be music in every classroom, even if it's just
Yeah.
chill music.
I
Just,
still think back, that's my buddy and I were into AC/DC at the time, so we'd bring AC/DC in
yeah,
and play big balls, right? And
yeah,
get things stirred up as immature kids. But that's where I got introduced to the Beatles. There were two kids who loved the Beatles, so we'd have to trade back and forth, and
yeah.
they'd bring in the Beatles.
No, it's
I agree with
great.
you, though.
I think, yeah, I think well, you and I are huge music people, and then she met this guy named Greg, and dated him for a while, and she ended up marrying him. That was my second stepdad, and I want to say they got married when I was in eighth grade because my dad. Oh, I left a part out. So in between that sixth and eighth grade year time frame for me, middle school,
Mhm.
middle school,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
fun. This happened during middle school, which is a great time of every child's life. Um, is my dad actually had a surrogate,
Yeah.
and she had my sister, and that's when he actually lived in northern Michigan.
Mhm.
He had the coolest house. Oh my gosh, the coolest house, right on the water, and it was amazing. And it was just him and Anna, and there was a nanny. And I think he was the happiest when he was up north. Like I think if he could have lived the rest of his life up north, that's where he would have stayed.
Yeah, yeah.
He was truly the most at peace, and just he had a boat.
Yeah.
And
I'm looking at the map behind you, but I think he was on Lake Michigan, right?
no, Burt Lake.
Burton Lake?
Burt Lake.
Burt,
Burt
okay.
Lake. And he had a cool community of friends up there. He worked for a great hospital up
Yeah.
there.
Nice
You
way to
know,
get away probably from
he loved it.
yeah.
He loved it. He would still go down to see his dad, my grandpa, and see family, but he loved up north.
Yeah.
He just I remember that. And
Northern
I was
Michigan's
young.
nice.
It's beautiful. Oh my gosh, up north is amazing. So I would say that was probably one of his happiest times of his life.
Yeah.
If I just from my perspective as his daughter in that time. So and Anna was there and so he had it so I had my sister. And
What's
then
the what's the age difference between you
yeah, I was
guys?
trying to remember. So I think when she was born, um maybe I was in 6th grade. So I don't know that's like 11, 12 or
That
something.
sounds about right.
I
Because I
think
feel like
so.
when I met her and Alexis, they were pretty little kids.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
we just got out of college, and
Yeah, yeah,
they were
yeah.
pretty
So I think she
small.
was, yeah, and she's sweetest baby. So so that happened, and then my mom's dating this new guy. So a new sister,
Yeah.
new guy. Um, and then it all came to a culmination for me in 8th grade when my dad remarried my stepmom, and my mom married Greg. So
Yeah.
I believe there was 2 weddings that year,
That's awesome.
and I was at both.
Yeah. Now you
Um,
could look at that one of two ways, right? It's
yeah.
like that's kind of messed up and unique, or it's like I got to go to 2 weddings and be the flower girl in 2 weddings.
I wasn't in the wedding.
Oh, you weren't?
Well, my mom married Greg in our house. It was fine. It was like
Yeah.
a family party. It was fine. I think a justice of the peace came to the house. It was weird. I mean, come on, but it was fine. And he had 2 children who were close to my age. And then my dad and my stepmom remarried in Vegas. And I can't remember if the chapel was in the hotel we were staying at or if we went to a
Oh,
chapel.
so you actually went to it.
Oh yeah, I was there. So I can't remember though if the chapel was in the hotel or if we went to a chapel. I don't remember. So then they remarried. And then they had my other sister. So then life just kind of hummed along. And so then when I would visit Michigan, I would visit their home. So when I would go back to Michigan, they had a beautiful home and I would spend time there.
Yeah.
And again, I think that especially during those middle school years and high school years, there was just, I had been in fight and flight for so long. And um, I had gone through a lot of trauma, a lot of change. And I had such a severe abandonment complex because of not having my dad in my life because it was so sporadic,
Not just your dad, but it gets compounded with going to Northern California and having husband number 2 and then moving back and having husband number 3, I think, right?
Right.
You get to know these people and it's like, oh, it's my dad, my stepdad. You're my new dad.
Right.
Now he's gone. And
Right.
then, oh, you're the new dad. Oh,
Right.
now he's gone.
Right.
So it's a little.
So there's a lot of,
there's
no, and I think my mom was trying to create a family.
Yeah.
That was her ultimate goal, right?
Yeah.
But my dad and I were very close and yet we weren't, right?
Yeah.
So he was never, I think I can only think of 3 instances where I was with both my parents together in my childhood.
One was our wedding.
I'm talking about my childhood, maybe 2
okay.
in my childhood. Like he came to one softball practice when he was in town and I remember being at dinner with them. And I remember how weird it was for me to say I was with my mom and dad because that never came out of my
Yeah.
mouth. I never said I was with my mom and dad.
Yeah.
I think those 2 times I was able to say that. And I remember loving being able to say that.
Yeah.
And I remember being just so fascinated by families where the parents were married
Mhm.
and they had this great life and everyone, most of the kids I knew's parents were still married. Divorce
Mhm.
was just starting. It's like,
Well, we are the beginning of that generation, too.
right. It was
The
just starting its
daycare and
journey,
divorce. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So most I was my mom, was one of the few single moms when I was in elementary school. Like she was not invited to chaperone
Mhm.
dances or, she wasn't really in because she was a single mom and all
Yeah.
that. So that stigma, but like I never felt like I belonged to something. Like I didn't totally belong with my friends because they came from normal families and their parents were married and they all seemed healthy and okay. And I remember kind of observing them growing up thinking, wow, like you're all fine. Like you don't have any worries. Where I was constantly in a state of worry and
Yeah.
anxiety. And I could never understand how my peers were just okay with life and
Hmm.
humming along when every day for me was an utter struggle, survival, it felt like. So, uh, and then I didn't totally feel like I belonged in my Armenian family because I'm half Armenian
Hmm.
and I was never with them enough. Right as I would start to feel like, okay, I'm getting the groove, I'd have to go back to
Summer's
Oregon.
over.
Summer's over. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
3 weeks you're here is over. So it would be wonderful. And then I'd have to go back to Oregon. And then I never felt I belonged in my dad's family, with my stepmom and their children, because I was from his first marriage and his first life. And that wasn't totally
Yeah.
welcomed. And
Yeah, yeah. What a trip.
there was some kind of resentment and some
Yeah.
jealousy, and for whatever reason, so I never felt like I belonged there. And then with my mom, of course, I always belonged with my mom. But then when there was a man, especially my second stepdad, he had a weird relationship with
Yeah.
me. He was kind of jealous of me and he
Yeah.
liked it better when I was visiting my dad because they could do their thing.
Hmm.
And then when I would come back, they'd have to get more on a regular schedule. So when she was married to him, I didn't totally feel like I belonged in that family.
Do you saying all this as a young kid, or from the perspective or of a young kid, which you were, it's it's nutty. Not, I don't know what the right word is. It's not nutty, but can as an adult, can you rationalize it now where all these moving parts kind of make sense for the people? It wasn't like, oh, we don't want Nicole with us or this or that, but what made me think of this is if you're the stepdad and your mom, they have a relationship,
Hmm.
you're just in the way in terms of where this guy's mentality is.
Hmm.
Whereas your mom, you and your mom, you're tight.
Yeah.
You're hers, but for him, you're competition.
Right.
Elsewhere, you're competition.
Yes.
But you can rationalize it now, but it made no sense then, I would assume.
I never felt accepted. I never felt accepted and I never had a sense of self because I didn't know where I came from really. So, like when I was with my peers, I would kind of identify with them. Like that's how I would find my sense of self because I didn't have any idea who I was. So, I would kind of adjust myself to my surroundings. So, when I was in Michigan with my cousins, I would adjust to that life.
Hmm.
And then when I was with my stepmom and my dad and their family, I would be on the defensive. I would be on high alert, but I would adjust. I had different personalities depending on which world I was in.
Yeah.
I had many different worlds, and none of them I felt accepted in. And this isn't to say, everybody should feel sorry for me.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just stating. I'm just saying this is how I felt,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying everyone was horrible, but I'm saying this is how I felt.
You know what's
And
interesting is I think people can relate to that. Like I can, and I have a quote unquote normal,
yeah,
right? My parents
very
were
normal.
together and had a
Yeah.
big family, but I think as kids, we're all exposed to weird things. I had my aunts in Jersey City, and they're crazy aunts, and it
Mm-hmm.
was uncomfortable and weird, but it was still okay. I had my family in West Virginia, who I love to death. It's just different though, right? They're in West Virginia. I was in New Jersey, so it's interesting. But it's I always had a home base,
Yeah, it's
and
a
I don't
little
think you had that
different because
attachment to a home base type of thing.
yeah, you weren't resented. You were always
No.
accepted
Yeah.
and celebrated.
Yeah.
So I don't remember ever feeling celebrated in my entire childhood,
Yeah.
ever.
That's interesting.
Now I'm not saying that effort wasn't put in.
Yeah.
My mom, I mean, we celebrated my birth. I don't mean like literally, like we
Yeah.
celebrated my birthday and I got wonderful gifts for Christmas and,
It just nothing was settled.
I was a priority. So I
Yeah.
was a priority and my family in Oregon loved me and my family in Michigan loved me. But underneath the surface, I did not feel like I belonged anywhere. So in a way, I felt like I was always kind of treading water.
Mhm.
And then I had this huge abandonment issue from my dad and then men in general.
Yeah, yeah.
So I resolved that through having a boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I did skip over one thing. One thing with my second stepdad is he was inappropriate. He didn't touch me or anything, but I remember he would kiss me on the lips right from the start.
And how old were you?
6th grade.
Yeah, that's weird.
And I remember, yeah, and that was weird. I eventually, like, when I was young enough it was had happened before I was old enough to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
But then as I got then I stopped it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it didn't go on long, but all of a sudden I was like, ugh. And then, I would catch him looking at me.
Yeah, you've mentioned.
Yeah, he would look at
like
me.
leering at
He
you.
would leer at me.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when he would have he had a friend over once and he was like flirting with me.
Yeah.
That's when I was I was 15, I think then. So I was in high school. But so there was something off about him with that. Nothing happened, but he also wasn't necessarily 100% of a safe space, if I can say that. Like when I'd be laying outside in the sun, he was watching me, stuff like that. So just inappropriate shit. Eventually they got divorced. But what happened is I was boy crazy, right? I was boy crazy from easily 6th grade because I had a boyfriend then. I was that girl who was making out with boys in 6th grade.
Mm-hmm.
One thing, as boy crazy as I was very monogamous because I was trying to fill that void of not having a dad around with a consistent relationship with some sort of male figure. So whether it was my 6th grade boyfriend or my 7th grade boyfriend or my 8th grade boyfriend.
Did you have any friends who were in the same boat as you, that were boy crazy?
Yeah, yes, there was another girl that was also, and when I say making out, I'm talking about kissing.
Yeah.
But she was also down for that too. And then, yeah, there were girls like dating in middle school, but they weren't obsessed like I was. I mean, I think there was like maybe one or two, but most girls were fine.
Yeah.
And that always perplexed me because I wasn't. Like I was trying to fill that void. There was always that void and I was always trying to fill it. So when I got into high school, I actually ended up dating the nicest guy ever. Thank God. He came from a normal family. He had siblings. He had great parents. He was awesome. He took me to my first Grateful Dead concert. He introduced me to a lot of really great music. A lot of our relationship was about music. So I'm very grateful because high school was so tumultuous because things weren't going good with my second stepdad and my mom, and him and I weren't totally getting along. So my home life there was bad. And then when I would go back to Michigan, there was always, my stepbrother and I butted heads, and that was a nightmare at that house. So I had no safe space at all. And so my boyfriend became my safe space, and he was awesome. But I don't think I was good for him. Like, we loved each other for high school love.
Yeah.
We loved each other very much. But he was dealing with damage.
He was probably stable with a stable family, and he's got this crazy wild damaged goods.
Yeah.
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 And too young to deal with it, quite frankly.
Absolutely. And
I'm a pro.
Yeah. He did. I look back. I've reflected, obviously, as you unpack your trauma.
Yeah.
It's kind of like AA, like how those people that are alcoholics have to go apologize and like kind of go step by step. When you unpack your trauma, you actually have to go step by step.
Yeah.
You have to unpack your childhood trauma to heal from it, and you have to go step by step.
Well, it's an interesting thing you're bringing up, and it came up with your mom, right? She's probably too old to go there, maybe, right? We talked about that. You go see a therapist or talk to someone and unpack it.
Right.
She never really did, but you certainly have, I think. And it's probably a lifelong process, right?
Well, I mean, I think that at this point, I'm 53, and I really feel like I probably didn't resolve all of my trauma until like 4 years ago, maybe. Yeah. I mean, and I'm talking about all of it.
Yeah.
Like I resolved, and we'll get to that. I resolved a lot, but where I am like really okay.
Yeah.
But you have to remember, from age 1 to 18 and probably through college, I was in fight or flight. So your body's in fight or flight. Your mind is in fight or flight. I had a lot of different coping mechanisms. One of them was dating, like finding a boyfriend. And then the other one was, of course, drinking.
Mm-hmm.
Once I started that was fun. I didn't drink until summer before sophomore year. Um, and then of course, dabbling in smoking pot, and then having an eating disorder,
Mm-hmm.
which we're going to go more in depth in another episode, but I had an eating disorder, and I did cut,
Mm-hmm.
and I had
That's crazy.
I definitely had some episodes where I wanted to kill myself.
Yeah.
Like I really did want to kill myself. And I thought about how I was going to do it. And I think at one point I even wrote a letter,
That's fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted it. You're in so much pain that you just want to release. You don't understand that you're making a permanent decision for a temporary problem.
Yeah.
But when you have always felt that way your whole life, it doesn't feel temporary. So, that's kind of how I got through it. I survived through high school. And then this poor guy,
Yeah.
Now he didn't know all of that was going on. It's not like I projected all of it onto him,
You
but
probably didn't know it was all going. You did, but you didn't.
I didn't.
It's just the way it was.
I was chaos.
Yeah.
I was chaos. And we had a great friendship and a great relationship and a lot of fun. But when I was spiraling, it was, I'm sure, a nightmare for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel horrible about that. I mean, I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was damaged, but I wish I could go back and fix that, but you
Yeah.
can't. So, I mean, he's great. I think he's still probably a wonderful guy, and he has a great life, and thank God. And that's wonderful. And I actually, I will say, when Facebook first came around, I did reach out to him and I did apologize.
Mm-hmm. I do remember that.
Yeah. And I think it took him a while to respond because he's probably like, oh my God, run.
Yeah.
But he was very gracious. He was very gracious. So and so then in college, I dated one kid briefly, and then I had my college boyfriend. Even on my senior trip to Mazatlan, when my friends were like hooking up with different guys or meeting different guys, I met one guy and I was with him for that week. Like it was very much about one person.
Mm-hmm.
I was never one of these that could like my body count is so low because I was never one that could like just get with guys. I just couldn't do it. I had to know them or whatever. And even this guy in Mazatlan, like we got to know each other, and he wrote me letters afterwards and called me and thought we were going to have a relationship. So I'm very much into that monogamy from the very start. And then I had my college boyfriend, who was one of your very good friends at the time. And we were this is how we met. We were in the same friend group. And it allowed you and I to become very good friends. We were that platonic good friend that we became good friends. But I was with him all through college, right? So that feeling of abandonment and that trying to fill that void, one way or another, when someone has an absentee father, especially, that's why you should never underestimate the value of a father in a child's life, especially a girl's life.
Yeah.
It's monumental. It truly shapes who they become and how stable they are in life, and what it teaches them self-respect and value. I never felt valued.
I think the dad father child relationship, I'll say it's more important than the mother father or mother child, but
No.
that's just me saying that as a dad. I just don't. You have to take it seriously. It is such a monumental thing, and because you have a biological connection to your mother because your mother delivered you, or if you're either way you were in your mother's womb and all that. Mother. Yeah. So the father, it's critical.
It's so critical.
It's so critical. You cannot abandon your kids. No. You have to take an interest. You cannot. You've got to be there. It's
so
crazy.
It's so important.
Yeah.
I just as speaking as someone who didn't have that, it's so vital. It helps form who you are.
Yeah.
And without it, you have to figure it out for yourself. And eventually I did, right? So I continued with my coping mechanisms through college. And then, you and I ended up together, and you were the first man in my life who saw me for truly who I was and accepted me completely, no matter what I did and no matter what happened. Like, it didn't affect how much you love me, and it didn't affect you. You never left. You never left. You never left.
Yeah. Yeah.
You never wanted to leave me.
I like wild, crazy broads.
I know.
Damaged goods, right?
No, yeah, damaged goods. But when you come from the space that I came from, you almost self-sabotage things because you always know something bad's going to happen.
Yep.
Because nothing ever good does that lasts. Things are temporary that are good. So I actually, I think I've said this before, but I spent a good beginning of our marriage just like testing you in a lot of ways of, I know you're going to leave, so I might as well ruin this. Like, I might as well like push the boundaries a little bit just to kind of see, are you really going to stay? Are you going to go? There was a lot of that abandonment shit in the beginning. And then
I remember having,
you remember that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Working our way through that. Like,
yeah.
What the fuck is going on type of thing. Right.
Yeah.
Why are you,
Yeah. Like, why am I acting like this?
Yeah.
And I remember when we were trying to decide what we were going to do after we got married, if we were going to stay in Portland or what we were going to do. And I remember you saying to me, because I still was struggling with stuff with my dad, that was always such an issue. And you said, let's move to Michigan so you can resolve this.
Mm-hmm.
Because I said, I don't want to project this onto our kids. Whatever is going on with me, I don't want to project this onto our kids. And you said, let's move to Michigan so you can resolve this once and for all. And we were 23. Yeah. And you were, as a 23-year-old young man, you thought of that for me. I mean, it was just, I look back on that now, I'm like, my God, that was such love coming from you. Just
the wisdom.
No, but it's also just so giving and unselfish and thoughtful. And just, you love me enough to do that, to move to Michigan. You didn't know anybody in Michigan.
Yeah.
And then we did. And that was a very tumultuous year. That was a crazy year. And that's when I found out also that I had another sister that I didn't know about from one of my dad's relationships in high school. And she's amazing. Mm-hmm. And but it was another thing that was like, wow, okay, another change.
I don't remember it being completely tumultuous. At least probably not for me, right?
No, I think it was great for you.
Maybe.
No, I mean, I think
we partied a lot.
We did party a lot. No, it wasn't. I'm not saying negative, but there were some tumultuous times because I was like living in the same place as my dad for really the first time ever. And also he has a family and how to fit in there.
Yeah.
And we're married and all that. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was crazy, but it lasted a year.
Yeah.
And then we were out of there. So, and I would say that, I don't know if anything was officially resolved, but I was okay after that as far as like putting it to rest. I was like, okay, this is done.
I think that year allowed you to make sense of certain things that you hadn't made sense of yet. And if it didn't fully resolve it, at least it kind of moved it further down a little bit, or progressed a little bit further in terms of understanding.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. Yeah. I think it did help with some understanding.
Kind of let you put some things into compartmentalize certain aspects and, okay, this is how it is. And it's not really even about me as much as it's just this crazy fucked up situation I was part of.
Right.
It wasn't necessarily personal, but it was at times.
One thing I should backtrack to is you and I had been friends in college for most of college. Mm-hmm. And so I think that by the time we got together, I think you were definitely a safe place for me because we had so many long talks, and that was such a foundation of our relationship. And you knew me really pretty well, I would say, from that.
Yeah.
So it's not like we were going in blind at all. Like we had known each other for so long. I think we were the only vegetarians. So whenever I brought food to parties, you would always eat my food,
Yeah.
you know, and we would just have these really long talks. I mean, I know in our friend group, there was definitely suspicion that like we had cheated or something
Yeah.
on my boyfriend, but we absolutely had not. There was never any crossover of anything. And
Yeah. Yeah.
we actually, after graduating from college, drove around the country for 2.5 months. And I know for me, that was when I knew that I wanted to marry you. Because if you can be in a car with someone for 2.5 months, you could
Yeah.
definitely probably make a life together. But I think that foundation helped. And I think I've talked about this before, that for a successful marriage, having that foundation of friendship, because so much goes on in marriage,
Yeah.
you always can come back to that friendship. So we had that time to create that
Yeah.
foundation. And I think that helped when we lived in Michigan for that year. And that also helped as I was figuring out my shit, basically,
Yeah.
you know? So there was that level of respect.
Well, I think in the spirit of that, if you're really friends with someone, you have mutual respect
Right.
and a foundation to fall back on. Whereas if you're in this, for lack of a better word, transactional relationship that's semi-transactional, short term, you get into it for whatever reasons.
Yeah.
But if you're friends that evolves into something more than friends, you obviously have more. There's more substance there, I guess.
100%. And like you said, there's a level of respect that we just, even though we go at it, we are in a constant state of debating.
I don't know what you call it.
It's never boring.
It's definitely not.
Over 30 years, and it has never been boring. And our kids, I know we drive them crazy sometimes, but even though there's still, we'll never go to a certain level
what
with
cracks
each
me up,
other.
it came up the other day, whether I think we were playing Uno or something, with the kids, and they were like, "Well, you guys are fighting." We're like, "We're not fighting. We're just talking."
We're just talking.
Yeah.
You know, but it's just how we are. So we got married.
But that was way off base.
It was way off base.
Yeah,
it was way off base. Yeah, I don't even know where that came from.
There wasn't even banter.
No.
It was just like, what the hell are you talking about?
No. So it's
Maybe they're damaged.
I don't hopefully not. We worked so hard to give them this great childhood. But so we had that year, and then we moved back, and then I will be the first to say that my heart healed when I became a mother. When I had Nathan, I shifted. My whole personality shifted, my heart shifted, my brain shifted. It's like it was like a balm over my soul.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. It was so healing. And I felt so fortunate to have him and be a mother, and it was just such a gift. And I for the first time in my life, I felt real joy and purpose, and I belonged to I belonged. I was a mother, and I was your wife, and we were a family.
Yeah.
And I belonged to something. Truly.
Well, we, having our first kid, we went from being a couple to being a unit.
Yes.
Now we're this, the
family,
three-legged
as
stool.
people do. Yeah.
We're the family unit.
But it just gave me such that it stabilized me. It grounded me. I don't know. I shifted completely because I had no more doubt, because it was all about being a mother. It was about him.
Yeah.
And so I found a strength that I didn't know existed. And it also, over the years of being a mother, helped me understand what I deserved when I was growing up and what I was not given, especially by my dad. Watching you and Kaya, you be a father to her, it's been joyous to me, and I'm so grateful for it. You're an amazing dad, and you guys have such an incredible relationship. She's such a strong woman, and so much of that has to do with you as being her dad. But it also, I've been able to see how it helped me understand why I was so broken.
It makes sense.
Like
Yeah.
I was able to give myself grace
Yeah.
because it was like, why did I do those things? Why was I acting like that? Why was I spiraling? Why was everything always so crazy? Oh, well, that's why.
Yeah.
You know, that's why that child was the way she was, and I finally wasn't understood. I'm like, oh, that wasn't normal.
It's an interesting concept because I think you subconsciously do that or not you, but in general, we all subconsciously do that as we're doing this parenting thing.
Yeah.
But for you to see this alternative
Yeah.
approach to a father-daughter relationship, yeah, I never thought of it in those terms. It makes a lot more sense. Kind of put some pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah. It helped me understand myself and,
Yeah.
and why I was the way I was. Because for so many years, I just felt crazy.
Yeah.
And I thought, I am crazy. That's it. It's all my fault. I had guilt because I thought I'm a bad person or I'm
Hmm.
crazy or something's wrong with me. And not even realizing, no, this really is because of everything you experienced growing up.
Yeah.
And it's not normal. And that here's this normal way things should be. And so it really helped me. It helped me. It helped me watching her grow up with a father and also you with the boys
Yeah. Yeah.
and us as a family.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
because I so badly wanted to be, we talked before we got
Yeah.
married, as I've said in other episodes, it's important to do that. I wanted to be home because of all this,
Yeah.
because of everything I'd gone through. I had lived in a state of instability and chaos my whole life. So, you know how a lot of
Yeah.
women are like, I want to go get a job and I want to have a career
Yeah.
and I want to do this. I want to travel and I want to do all these things. I was like, no,
I'll
no, no,
stay
no.
home.
I did all the things.
Yeah.
I've been doing all the things since I was 1 year old. I want stability. I
Yeah.
want to stay at home. I want to cook. I want to clean. I want to bake cookies. I want to change diapers because I never had that stability. I flipped. So I never had the itch because I never was in one. I never felt like I was grounded.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be home. Thankfully, you wanted your wife home because your mom was home.
Yeah.
So you wanted to try to replicate how you grew up. So it worked for two totally different reasons.
Well,
You know,
what's funny is, I don't want to make it sound like you overcompensated, but you got to do some things that were, say, pseudo iconic concepts, like in the fall going and picking pumpkins with the kids
yes.
at a pumpkin patch,
Yes.
picking apples. We lived in Jersey at the time, right?
Yeah.
So picking apples.
Hmm.
I think you even went picking strawberries,
Yeah.
right? So those
Oh my gosh. No.
Hallmark type of things.
Talk about overcome. I was
Yeah,
class mom.
Yeah.
I was team mom. I'm still team mom for our son. I was the Girl Scout leader.
Yeah.
I went on all the field trips. I have a snack drawer I've had in my house since the kids were little that every kid who walks in this house can open and eat whatever they want. And we have a mini fridge filled with drinks. Don't ask. The rule in this house is you don't ask, you just help yourself, because our house has been an open door policy for the last like 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
All the kids are welcome here.
Mm-hmm.
I jumped in and I like cannonballed into this. I'm like, whatever I can do to be the mom, the wife, I'm doing it. And I have loved every minute of it.
You know, it's interesting. The reason I gave the disclaimer of the overcompensating is because the kids, it's worked out in that you have done all those things, but they don't feel that overbearingness of like, oh, my mom this or my mom that, right? We're friends with them at this point.
Yeah. I mean,
it's an interesting balance, I think, that has been struck in that sense.
I mean, and thank God, because it is weird. I think some of that has to do with how I communicate with them. I've always tried, we have an open communication in our house. Like we talk about everything, but I try to not make them talk unless it's something that I feel that, look, we need to talk about this.
Than I am.
I try to give them some space. Like I try to wait until they come to me because I know they're going to.
Because I go in on them. What's going on?
They shut down.
They shut down, and then
I'm like, just let it.
Yeah.
Let
they
it.
go complain to you about me, and then open up. Yeah.
Yeah, probably. But so maybe that, and I have tried to keep a balance of not being involved in their personal life unless we're needed,
Yeah.
but being a presence of support at all times if need. Like we're on call. Tap us in whenever you need us. We're here.
Yeah.
And I never wanted my kids to come home to an empty house. And if I wanted them to know, I just wanted that 1950s traditional lifestyle. And it's not because I'm an anti-feminist. I'm not.
Yeah.
It's my own personal thing. I needed that. And thank God you wanted that too. And you worked your ass off to give that to us. We started out with nothing.
Yeah.
We lived in a box that's the size of this very small room we're in was our entire house.
Yeah.
Including
the bathroom, the shower,
everything, the kitchen,
everything. Yeah.
We started with nothing. And at one point you were biking to work. That's how important it was to both of us that I was home.
Yeah.
And we've built this life together, but we have made sacrifices.
We talked about that. We could have gone an easier path.
Yes.
Getting a little more familiar or family support type of thing.
Right.
But we didn't, we went a different route.
Or I could have gone to work.
Yeah.
And I know, I don't know, but I'm sure there's been judgment through the years from different people that have entered our lives, or have been in our lives that I haven't worked, but it's been both of our value.
Yeah.
It's not been me saying, I don't want to work. It's our value for how we wanted to raise our children. And it's a partnership. And I've said in the past, you had the privilege of going and pursuing your career knowing that everything on the home front was taken care of. You never worried about, are my kids okay? Is there going to be dinner when I come home? Is my house going to be clean? Am I going to have clean underwear? It was done.
Yeah.
So it allowed you the freedom in your mind to focus completely on your work.
Yeah.
And I had the privilege, you gave me the privilege of being able to be home and create that life.
Yeah.
So we worked as a wonderful partnership. And as a result, I say there are no report cards or salary raises or promotions when you're a parent. I think the way you know that your reward or that you did an okay job is if your adult children want to hang out with you still. And they want to hang out with us.
And they're successful.
Well, and they're successful. Yeah. I'm talking about our relationship.
Yeah, they're not in the basement
no
looking to come up for dinner.
No, they're well adjusted. They're working. They're contributing to society. Yeah. Our children volunteer, all that stuff. But our relationship with them, they want to still hang out with us. So I feel like, okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Your college degree,
yeah,
it's childhood education.
So it's officially humanities, but it's an emphasis on early childhood education.
And what took you down that path?
Well, in college, so when I went to college, I just wanted to get out of Portland, and I needed a change. I didn't ever have an idea completely when I went to college what I want to do with my life because I was coming from such chaos. I just needed to get out. And then through the first couple of years at school, I thought about psychology for a long time because of where I came from. I thought about psychology for a long time, but I've always loved children. And I've always, like when I was in high school, I worked at a daycare, ironically.
Yeah.
And I love kids. And so eventually I just thought, you know what, this would be a career I would enjoy. And I thought this would also be a good schedule when I become a mother. If I'm a teacher, I would be on there. I was already thinking.
Yeah.
I was already thinking about when I became a mother that this would be something I could do. And when they're off, I'm off.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed, I've always loved children. And I've always been able to connect with children.
Yeah.
So, but then I just wanted to be home.
Yeah.
You know, I did actually also think the psychology thing, I thought about wanting to be a therapist or a school counselor in a high school to help kids.
Yep.
Because I knew there were kids probably like me that suffered for different reasons. So I would have really enjoyed that. But I just was so hyper-focused on wanting to be home with my family.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I ask is I think that your background there has allowed you to probably be a better mom or a better communicator with the kids.
Maybe.
That's what kind of piques my curiosity on that.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I never got certified. So like I have
You're certifiable.
I didn't go my 5th year.
Yeah.
So if I went my 5th year, I would have been able to teach, but it could be, and it could just be
a natural affinity.
I guess,
Yeah.
just wanting, I just always wanted, I know from the way I grew up, every day felt like it either felt like the end of times or it was always ups or downs. Every day was so important to me. And at times I didn't feel that anyone around me understood that I'm holding on for dear life here.
Hmm.
So with our kids, I've always wanted to honor every day for them. And yeah, this may be minuscule in the whole scheme of life, but for right now in this moment, this means everything. And I'm going to honor that for you. And so I'm not going to diminish it
Yeah.
and I'm not going to undermine it.
Yeah.
I belittle it because right now, this feels like everything. So I think that came from me never being honored for me.
Yeah.
So it's one of the reasons I try to, when they come to me when they were 8, 15, 22, whatever the hell it is. Sure,
Yeah.
I'm 53. I know everything's going to be fine, but that's not how you feel right now.
Yeah.
And you need someone to say, I understand you. I get you. And I hear you. I see
Yeah.
you. And I honor what you're saying.
I think I've grown into that more,
Yes,
but
you're much
that's
better.
much better now than even a year ago
But
or 2
you,
years ago. But
yeah,
you've always been good at that. Where I'm more like, come on, keep.
yeah,
It's not that big a deal. Let's roll.
yeah. Well, and I think some of that's from the way you were raised.
Probably.
I think,
Yeah.
I think you were probably raised that way where, it was, you were raised by the men around you were either silent generation or Gen
Yeah.
X.
Yeah.
And it's very much like, can't get over it. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Be a man. Just
World
get over
War
it.
II and Vietnam
Yeah.
vets and
No.
get back in the game, buddy.
Gen X men
Yeah.
were not listened to about their emotions.
Nah.
No one checked in. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
No one checked in with Gen X boys about how they were feeling about anything.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about how we check in with our kids. None of that was
Yeah,
done. So, and the reason I'm like that with the kids is because of my own experience. I have thought that to myself before, like, how did I create such a traditional family life when I had zero example of that growing up? Like I had no blueprint, but I think I just had this dream as a kid of what I wanted. And so I just tried to create that. Like, this is what I wish I had. So I'm
Yeah.
just going to create that.
Yeah.
And that's and then thankfully
Probably,
you had the blueprint.
So I was just about
You
to
had
say,
the blueprint.
I'm not looking to take credit, but
No, no.
as we would navigate this,
Yeah.
I had something that,
Oh, 100%.
whatever I grew up doing, we did as a family.
100%. Now, you came from a strong family background. You also gave me permission to not give a shit about what others think.
Mm-hmm.
Truly. I was kind of raised like to always look at where the other person's coming from.
Yeah.
To a fault. And you were like, fuck them. And you really gave me, but it liberated
Sound
me.
like an asshole.
No, but it liberated me when it mattered. It liberated me. Now, a lot of that I acquired it once I became a mother. If it came to my kids, like I had no hesitation.
Move you to New Jersey and take that West Coast out of you and fit right in.
Yeah. Yeah. But also it was more just like, it's okay. You don't have to always be caring about everyone else's feelings. Like you don't need to be a jerk, but it's okay to reclaim your own energy. Because I was also, from the way I was raised, I was also a people pleaser and walked on eggshells. So I was always hyper aware of how everyone else in the room was feeling because I didn't want to do anything to upset them more.
Yeah.
So when you grow up like that, you helped me let a lot of that go where I could be like, I reclaim my own energy back. I reclaim my own space. And I didn't have to worry about everyone else in the room. It was very liberating. It was very, that allowed me to have, that brought me a lot of peace. So, raising our kids was very healing, but I still, here's one sad thing is, when I was, what would I have been in 2003? I would have been like, 32, 31. So my dad and I, for a couple years before that, maybe a year and a half before that, had started to really, for the first time, where I remember he was thrilled when Nathan was born and then thrilled when Kaya was born. And I remember I visited him on a layover in Arizona. He was there for some medical thing. And when he was walking me back to the taxi to take me back to the airport, he apologized to me.
Oh, really?
He said, "I'm sorry for everything that you were put through with your mom and I's divorce and everything." I don't know why I don't know where that came from. It was so random. And
Well,
that
the interesting thing about him is, chaotic as he was, he's very, what's the right word?
intuitive.
Intuitive, in touch with things.
Hmm.
He was a doctor. He had great bedside manner, so
Yeah.
he could empathize
Yeah.
or relate.
And I think
Was aware.
I think he was starting to get to the point in his life where he was reflective.
Yeah,
You and I have talked about this.
yeah,
When we hit 50, we started getting that
yeah,
way.
yeah,
So he was heading into his 60s.
yeah,
And I think he was reflecting. And he also probably seen me as a mom
yeah.
and a wife. And so he
Well, he was very proud of you.
yeah. But he apologized. That meant a lot to me. And then after that, he visited us.
Became more regular.
Well, he only came what 3 times total, I think. He visited us in New Jersey, and on his own,
Yeah,
he visited us in New Jersey, and that was a big deal for him to come and see me
I think he looked forward to it.
on his own.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
he came out for the kids' birthdays.
Yeah,
And as a result, him and we were just starting to have our own relationship for the first time since I was probably like 2. Because where it was really, he was making the effort for me.
yeah,
Because up until then, everything was on his terms.
yeah,
My whole childhood, our relationship was on his terms. It was never on my terms, as it should be.
yeah,
It should be on the child's terms, right? This was he was trying to have a relationship with me,
yeah,
where I had spent my whole life trying to have a relationship with him. And then I moved on.
yeah,
And then he came around and was trying to have a relationship with me and with the kids and everything. And things were really starting to take a turn. It was really glorious for me. I was so happy to have this newfound chance with him, and it was starting to really heal a lot that was left that was still hurting.
hmm
And then he died in a car accident.
hmm
He had come to see Kaya for her birthday, and a little more than a month later, he died in a car accident. And I would say that was very traumatic. My stepbrother was calling the house, but we didn't hear the phone. We were sleeping through
yeah,
it.
yeah,
It's when you had landlines. And the local police came and knocked on our door.
yeah. Like 2, 3 in the morning.
Yeah. And then you called for me because I was like, I knew something was wrong. I can't call.
Yeah, the cops like,
You need to call Michigan.
someone in Michigan is trying to reach you, and they've been calling. They can't, so call them.
And then you did.
Yeah,
And
I think I called Brian.
Brian, you talked to
Yeah.
Brian, and then you were the one that had to tell me.
Yeah, I still
And
remember it.
yeah.
Yeah,
And so when that happened, it wasn't just losing my dad, it was losing the potential of what could have been.
hmm
And it was losing the hope and the dream of us finally excuse me, of us finally having that relationship that I had been trying to have my entire life. And it's like I had gotten a glimpse of it, and then it was just ripped away from me. And I don't mean to sound selfish because, my God, he lost his life. So, I mean, there's so many levels of tragedy in this, but I'm speaking from my own perspective. I think one of the reasons it was just so utterly devastating to me is that had been on a perpetual wheel of losing my dad my whole life, because I would get a chance of exposure to him and then either have to leave Michigan, or he would have another life experience that would take him further away from me. Like, he was always like just drifting further and further away from me. So my life was always losing him. And then there was this chance where he was going to actually be able to be in my life. And then I lost him permanently. So it was devastating on so many levels, not just losing my dad. It was losing
hmm
my dream, all of it. And that's when I started drinking,
hmm
That's when I started drinking. Alcohol was never a huge part. Like I partied in high school and college, but it was never a big part of my life, my daily life. And that's when I remember I made a drink that night. And I think I made a drink every night after that for like 20 years.
Yeah, major coping.
Major coping. That's how devastating it was, and then one day I made the decision. I'm like, enough. Like, this is enough. Like, it's too much. And we've talked about how alcohol would affect us living into old age healthy and all that. But for me, it was like, stop.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I was getting drunk every night.
No,
I wasn't a drunk alcoholic.
no.
I just was having that
You're
drink.
coping.
I was a coping alcoholic. I was a very high functioning alcoholic. I would have at least a drink every night.
Yeah.
And then on the weekends we would have a few more. And we've talked about alcohol in another episode. That's a whole episode, but that's where it started, and so it was just that little bit of coping. And then I just was like, done. And and that's crazy. You think about it. So it's almost like half of my life dealing with my father issues.
Well, the real shame of it too is, like you were saying, he was, I remember him coming out and how happy he was to be there and how stress-free it was.
Yeah.
Right. But I also remember the lead up to it where he'd be like, Nicole, I'm thinking of coming out on this such and such date. Does this work for you?
Yeah.
And then, well, can you come out this weekend? It's, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is normal, but you never had that.
Never
Had that normalcy. It might have been his secretary.
Yes.
Calls them secretaries, admins, whatever you want to call them. In his world, it was his secretary.
Yeah.
She's working it out.
Yeah.
And this was him.
He was calling me.
He was calling and figuring it out.
It was almost like he was finally intentionally trying to have a relationship with me.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to be clear. My dad was a wonderful man and really a pillar of society in so many ways, and made such I'm not going to say who he is, but made such an impression on tens of thousands of people. I'll just say that. And he did love his children so much, and he did love me. He loved all his children, and I know he loved me. It's just he just wasn't good at being an active father, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He wasn't good at being that active dad.
Yeah.
But he did love his children, and I think if you go back to the root of what everything went on with him and my mom with the children, and then him with my stepmom and having another child, I think, again, something broke there. And so there was just like probably always a little bit of heartbreak he was carrying with him.
Yeah.
So no one's perfect.
The reality is, I think everybody's dealing with something.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
That's why we started this podcast.
Yeah.
Everyone has something to share.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that it's as heavy as what I'm talking about. I mean, there's people that have had amazing lives, and they're just as interesting as what I just talked about. Honestly, everyone's story is interesting. Everyone's story is interesting. It's not, doesn't all have to be dysfunctional and crazy like mine. I love to hear about everybody's life. I'm fascinated by everyone's story.
Well, what you're describing as dysfunctional and chaos, honestly, it's not that dysfunctional and it's not that chaotic. It's your life.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who have crazy dysfunctional.
Yeah.
You functioned. You made it through, right?
I made it through.
It was functional dysfunction or dysfunctional functionality, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, and I
just the way it is.
And I have to give a lot of credit to my mom, because even through all that, her and I maintained a really good relationship and open communication, and she tried the best she could in all situations. She was dealt a shitty hand, and then had to figure out how to raise me and keep her her mental health together. So, it's easy once you become a mother and a wife and you get older to look back and understand things. But when you're in it, it's so hard to really understand what's going on. So,
I think it's one of those things, going back to apologizing to your high school boyfriend for being crazy. At the end of the day, you're a good person. Not like and there,
Yeah.
it's not, you're not out there hurting anybody,
No,
not
no.
killing people,
No,
not
no.
causing harm against others. So it's
No.
just surviving, figuring shit out, right? It's all part of
Yeah.
it's all in our heads and our hearts or whatever, souls, whatever. But we're all navigating. We're all getting through
We
this.
are.
We're all dealing with different inputs and just meandering our way through.
Yeah, it's true. I just feel bad I projected. I mean, and I don't mean to say we had a lot of good times. We really did. But the bad times were like so bad. And it was because of me. He didn't do anything wrong. He really was a great guy. And he still is.
Yeah.
And even my college boyfriend, I should say, was a really great guy too. Like we loved each other very much for that time in our life. And we had a lot of fun. And he's a good person. Luckily, the young men that entered my world during these times were good people. I'm very fortunate because it could have been really bad because I was incredibly vulnerable. So the young men that were in my life, my high school boyfriend, my college boyfriend, at least I had good people with me because it really could have been so much worse. And then, to have you as a husband, I feel you saved me. You saved me. And I remember always telling you, even if we get divorced or hate each other, I will never speak badly of you because you did save me. You did. And I'm not saying that's why we got married. We got married because you were my other puzzle piece and we fit together perfectly and we are each other's person. And there was no hesitation in that at all. We were just each other's person. But you just never
Well,
hesitated
if I had
once.
saved you, it would not have lasted. So to your point, there's more of a puzzle piece coming together as opposed to some savior type of complex.
You were my missing
situation.
piece.
There you go.
You were my missing piece. But thankfully you had the fortitude to know how to handle me. I always say Brian got a degree in psychology just to be married to me.
Yeah.
So, and we've kind of had to grow up together because we got married so young, and a lot goes on. We know from having two good kids in their 20s, you grow up a lot in your 20s. So the fact that you and I got married and started having children and had to grow up together, kids having kids, and there's so many pros to that, but it's also challenging.
Yeah.
So I would say I am the most. Oh.
No, I know what I wanted to ask you.
What?
I don't mean to interrupt, but
no, it's fine.
You did not have religion as growing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe touch on that in terms of when you did get confirmed Catholic. What happened there? Explain that? I know some of the background, but
right. So religion, it's interesting because I am actually very spiritual and very religious. You aren't, and we still work together. So for people in those situations, my mom, we went to church a couple times. I think it was called Beaverton Foursquare. I think it was just a general Christian church. We only went a couple times. I remember going to Sunday school, but what I remember from that is I loved it. I always felt so good when we left, and I always believed in God. I never didn't believe in God. I was raised to believe in God.
Yeah. By who? By your mom or?
And my dad.
Okay.
And my dad. I was baptized Armenian Apostolic.
Yep.
My Armenian family goes to church.
Okay, that's what I was.
My dad, I never went to church when I was there visiting.
Yeah.
Well, I've been to Armenian churches for weddings, but not for a service. But my Armenian family is religious. My dad believed in God. My mom raised me to believe in God. So I always had that. It's not like anyone was atheist or agnostic or anything. But I never really had a religion except when I was baptized. And then when you and I got married in Vegas, they shut down the pool area of the Golden Nugget Hotel in Vegas for our wedding. So it was completely non-denominational. And so there was no religion there. And even when we first had Nathan baptized, it was by a non-denominational woman in my mom's apartment.
Oh my God.
Remember that?
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Your
My
parents were there.
out. Yeah.
I'm sure they were like, what the hell?
Yeah.
So I didn't have like
Totally
consistent religion, right? But I wanted him baptized.
Talk about weird.
Yeah, it was so weird. Then we moved to New Jersey, and we put them in Catholic school.
Yeah.
And I chose that. Well, Nathan was in preschool, and then I wanted Catholic school because I liked the smaller classrooms and the smaller environment than public school.
And I wanted uniforms.
And you wanted uniforms. Yeah. You grew up in the town that we moved to.
Yeah.
You went to public school there.
Yep.
But you wanted uniforms.
Yeah.
And I wanted a small classroom and a small community. So we put him in Catholic school. And you're Catholic. You were raised Catholic, but you weren't confirmed. You were baptized. You took communion.
Yeah.
But you were now confirmed.
Yeah.
And you don't go to church. And so between the two of us, if your child is in Catholic school, you need at least one parent that goes to church and participates in those things. It's just not going to work. So it was on me to be that parent. So I spent a year going to classes every Sunday for a year. And then I was baptized Catholic and received my confirmation on Easter service all at once. It was a long service. It was like an hour and a half or something, 2 hours.
Sure was.
Yeah. So then I became Catholic, and it started out for the kids because they were in Catholic school, and at least one of their parents should be an active Catholic because that needed to happen.
Was it mandatory or?
Yeah. Somebody needed to be Catholic.
Yeah. Okay.
And somebody needed to be going to church, and they were going through all their sacraments. And if one of us didn't have all of them, it wasn't going to fly. So
I think you could just pay more, right?
You had to show
larger tithing.
No, you had to show like a parent had to be Catholic.
Yeah. Okay.
So, at that time, they've changed a lot of things since then. Since the pandemic, things have changed. But through Catholicism and through our children attending Catholic school, all of them going to Catholic school until high school, my relationship with God has strengthened significantly, and my faith has become such an integral part of my life and of my journey. And my Kai and I try to go to church every Sunday, and I pray every day. And
you pray every day?
Yeah. I pray for you.
That's a good thing. Keep going.
Well, what's funny is that even though you don't go to church, you act more like a Catholic man than some Catholic men do. We've been married for almost over 30 years, and you've never cheated.
I think that's the rub for me, though.
You've never cheated on me.
No.
You're a family man. You never stopped at the bars. You don't spend every Saturday golfing. You are completely and utterly devoted to your family. And so, and you've paid Catholic school tuition.
Hell yeah.
For, oh my gosh, I don't even know how many years.
Thousands.
So at least 20 years. And we tithe every Sunday. Money comes out of our bank account every Sunday for the church. So
when does that finally get to stop?
I don't know. But so monetarily, you also have been very Catholic. So, even though you don't go to church with us, your actions are very Catholic. You've been a good Catholic husband and father by default, whether you want to be or not.
Yeah.
So that's where that came from. And it's helped me a lot, get through a lot. I will say that helped me get through a lot too.
Talking to God.
Talking to God. I just talk to God. That's what it is. You just talk to God. If one of the kids is going through something, I talk to God about it and ask him to help them. And that helps a lot. It helps with my anxiety. A lot of times at night, I'm sure people can relate to this. When you go to lay your head on the pillow, sometimes all your anxieties hit your brain. And if I can't sleep, I'll just say, God, just please take my anxieties from me. And it works. All of a sudden I go to sleep. I swear it works.
Sounds pretty good.
I give them over to God.
Yeah.
And he takes them, and then I can sleep.
Yeah.
So that has been huge in my life. There's one other thing I forgot to touch on, and I just want to share because it might help some women out there. But with my college boyfriend, when I was 22, I popped up pregnant accidentally. It was a complete accident. I had been on birth control since I was 16. For some reason, I went off of it briefly, and I can't tell you why because I don't remember. and I popped up pregnant, I did get an abortion. I got an abortion. I think I was only 4 weeks along, maybe 5. I hadn't even hit 6 weeks yet. And the reason I'm sharing this is because I want other women out there to know that it's okay if you've had to make that decision in your life, but also it's not a decision made lightly, and it's something that you carry with you for the rest of your life. And I personally feel in today's society, for younger women, they've been kind of sold this, oh, just get an abortion, it's no big deal, or have multiple abortions, what's the big deal? And that's just, I feel that's so unfair to do to young women, because it is emotionally damaging, it's mentally damaging, and it's something you never escape. For whatever reason, I don't regret my decision, but it's something I carry with me. And so I just think that young women need to understand that, yes, it's important to have that freedom and that choice, but it should not be taken lightly. And it should be, I believe abortion should be safe and rare. But if you've had one and you still carry that with you, that's very normal. It's a very normal reaction. And if you're going to have one, just be prepared that it's not something you just like go on with the rest of your life like it didn't happen. It's definitely something that's serious, and you need to think about it that way. So I wanted to share that because, I mean, it's something that I've struggled with. And I just think society is just so flippant about it now. And so I think it deserves to be taken a little more seriously, and young women should know that it's completely fine to have one. It really is, for whatever personal reason. But it's not like you're going to be totally fine mentally afterwards. You just aren't. And so you need to be prepared for that.
It's funny. When we drove around the country, we made that bumper sticker that we were selling in little shops, right?
Yeah.
Life is ideal, choice is real.
That was related to abortion. Like,
Yeah.
obviously,
It's come a long ways, though.
yeah, choosing life is ideal. That would be
Yeah.
the ideal situation if everybody could have the baby that if they popped up pregnant. But choice is the reality that you have to give. Women deserve that choice. And I am a Catholic, and I know that that goes against the teachings, but I'm very pro-woman, and I think you can be both. And so,
Well, you became Catholic later on in life.
Yes, but
I don't know if it would have mattered or not. But
well, no, because I'm still pro-choice.
yeah.
But I don't like the idea of it. This is my own personal opinion. I don't think it should be treated as birth control, and I also don't think it should be taken lightly.
Yeah.
And
but at the end of the day, it is what it is, and if it happens, it happens. And, right.
And you will be okay. But I just think that sometimes young women are kind of led to this feeling of it's like taking an Advil, or it's like changing your tampon. It is certainly not.
It's an interesting concept around a larger concept of how much the world has shifted, even just in our 30 years of marriage. And that's one big area. Is it used to be, oh God, an abortion was semi rare, and it was, to your point, it was hard.
Yeah.
Now this pendulum is so, to your point, flipping. It's a trip.
It wasn't
honestly.
Something that you shouted from the rooftops.
No.
And now there's literally
It's like a badge.
Now it's like they're proud. People are proud to shout it from the rooftops.
Yeah.
It's not something to be proud of.
Yeah.
That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
It's not something you need to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
But it is not something you should be proud of. And that's why I'm saying it belongs somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's not pride and it's not shame, but you got to put it somewhere else because that's what I'm talking about. Shout your abortion from the rooftops. That's wrong. And it's
weird.
Wrong to lead young women to think that that's normal behavior because then when they're suffering mentally from what
Yeah.
happened, um, then they might feel like, oh well, I'm not supposed to feel this way because it's no big deal. Everyone else is doing it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's
Kind of
like
fucks with their head.
it does.
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying that actually. It's all stays with you. It's
Yeah.
nothing as a woman that ever leaves you until the day you die, and so that's what I would like to see. Is just a little more reverence treated
Mhm.
again towards this situation, and that's why I'm sharing this. Is because this is what I've gone through, and I just for any young women out there to know you completely have the right to do that, but just really take it seriously. It's not like it can be a life-changing thing. Even having a baby's life-changing, but so is having an
Mhm.
abortion. So that was the one thing that I forgot to touch on.
I have one other one that you haven't touched on. Um, and it's
Wow,
in,
there's more.
yeah, well, it's in the life-changing arena. You and I both have had friends die
Hmm.
while we were still kids and teenagers.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know your friend's name. I'm not necessarily saying you share it, but you had a friend who flipped over in a car or
Yeah,
off-roading or something,
yeah. It
and
was like a month after graduation from
yeah,
high
yeah,
school, and him and some other friends were in a car, and the car flipped and he died. Him and another boy died.
two.
Two died.
Wow.
And yeah, it's shocking when, and I think when something like that happens, up until that point you kind of feel invincible because you're young
Yeah,
and you never face your mortality.
yeah,
I mean, unless those moments were like me where I was thinking about killing myself, but even then you actually, it's different. It's hard to explain. But when a peer dies, you realize you're not invincible
yeah.
and you can die. That's definitely life altering.
Do you still think about that? Does that come into
Yeah.
your psyche time to
Yeah.
time?
Like
Is it your
Like a Roman Empire. There was also another boy I knew in high
Roman
school.
Empire? What?
Remember on TikTok when they're saying men think about the Roman
Oh yeah,
Empire
yeah,
at
yeah,
least
yeah,
once a day?
yeah.
Um, and then there was another friend who jumped it head first into the Wilson River, hit his head.
Not intentionally.
Well, no, he dove intentionally, but he didn't
Yeah,
mean to hit his
did
head.
not mean to. Yeah,
He went home, went to sleep, and never woke up
yeah,
again. That's why I
yeah.
always tell the kids, you got to make sure you know how deep everything is before, and never jump head
We had some of
first.
those in Sparta.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, but I think those were for me in high school the only two that I can remember. I don't think I'm missing anyone.
yeah.
And then in college, I don't think we lost anybody
Uh,
in college. Afterwards, we
yeah,
know of some
after.
people,
Yeah,
but so yeah, that thankfully, as weird as it sounds, with the way my childhood went, that wasn't as prominent. You experienced more
yeah,
of that than me.
yeah,
You had suicides and
yeah,
murder
yeah,
and
yeah.
all that.
Accidentals. Yeah,
Yeah, all that. So
yeah,
that wasn't as prominent for me.
yeah,
Yeah. So now where I'm at is I've been good. I've been doing really well, and things have been really good for a long time for me. I feel completely healed. I feel whole. I feel at peace. I feel content. But I've unpacked my trauma.
yeah.
I have literally unpacked everything that I've gone through. I've unpacked it. I've faced it, and I processed it, and I found closure.
What do you think were some of those the catalysts that allowed you to unpack it? Was it probably the me, of course, right? But then family, kids,
Yeah.
you're finding God in a
Mhm.
sense,
Yeah.
stopping drinking, stopping the coping. Are those all part of
Yeah.
the puzzle, or
Yeah, because like I stopped having an eating disorder, I guess after college, even though once you have an eating disorder, you always are kind of aware of how you eat, but I never went back to that. Yeah, so as I let go of the unhealthy coping mechanisms and also becoming a mother, and also when you become a mother, you have to get your shit together.
yeah,
Like nothing helps you focus away from yourself more than becoming a parent.
yeah,
And then, then there's only so much time for your shit.
yeah,
So that helped a lot. I didn't have as much time to devote to my issues.
yeah?
So it's
Now
been
you wouldn't advise someone to go having kids to solve
no,
your issues.
No.
Careful there, because people do
Yeah, no,
that,
no, no, no,
right?
no, 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 no.
Yeah.
It didn't solve it.
Yeah.
It didn't solve it. That's why it's taken me so long too, is that
Yeah.
you get busy raising children and you put yourself on the back burner.
Yeah.
But letting go of the coping mechanisms, making a conscious decision we made a shift when we turned 50 to live a healthier life, and because we want to be around for our
It's like we're
kids.
finally growing up or something.
Yeah, I think that's Gen X though. I swear, I think Gen X, I think when we're 50, it's more like we're 30, like we're finally adults or something. It took us a
Yeah.
long time to become, but we were 30 when we were 10 too. Like, I think we're just
Yeah, yeah,
perpetually
yeah.
30. And then all of a sudden our maturity's caught up with it. I don't know, because we've always had to be so self-reliant. It's almost like I finally gave myself grace.
Yeah.
I finally wasn't so hard on myself. And I finally took the time to honor that child and say, I'm going to have a voice for you because you didn't have one for all those years. So I'm now going to go back and look at all those experiences because you deserve that, and that
So,
helped.
so, we've got a 20-something-year-old daughter and son,
Mm-hmm.
and a 14. And for the older two, especially, not the 14, not at all. They don't even want to talk to us.
He does.
No, but neither
Yeah.
do his friends or whatever.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Our older two's friends will seek advice, especially the girls, from you, right? Or you'll give unsolicited advice.
Yes.
Do you have any, say, nuggets for someone Kaya's age? The girls. If you look, we had the podcast with the girls, and it was a good conversation.
In general.
Yeah, yeah.
In general, from everything I've learned in life, number one, do not chase men.
Mm-hmm.
I 100% believe that if he wanted to, he would. I'm a big believer in that. I don't think you should chase men. I think if a man is interested in you, you will know. And if it's right, there should be no confusion. If you're feeling confused, it's not right. And I think that you should live your life and a man should add to it, to already what's going on, to your already good life. A man should add to it. You should not need him to fulfill anything for you except adding to an already good life. You should do your thing.
Yeah.
So, and also I think that be careful who you give your energy to sexually. When you are intimate with someone, you're accepting their energy and you're giving your energy. And that lasts inside of your soul. And so really, not everyone should have access to you. They should earn it.
Mm-hmm.
And not everyone deserves access to you, even family. It should be earned. And especially men, or, if you're gay, another woman, whoever you're giving access to of your body, take that seriously because you're accepting their energy. Make sure it's someone you want to accept their energy. And not everyone deserves access to you. Like, respect yourself enough and honor yourself enough to know that who you give your time and energy to, make sure they deserve that time and energy.
So I think you answered that, say, from a woman to woman.
Yeah.
It's probably this very similar answer to men, right? It feels like it can go, it's a two-way street.
Yeah. Yeah.
But do you have any additional advice for, say, a young man, your son or his friends?
My son or his friends? Well, of course, that's going to be
how an asshole.
No, how I've raised my sons is that they should make enough money that if their wife wants to stay home and raise their kids, they can provide that. But if their wife wants to work, they should support her in that. So I'm a big believer in that you should try to make as much money as possible so that your wife has that choice.
Your wife or you as a couple?
Well, you as a couple. Yeah. No, I mean, you as a couple.
I'm clarifying for you.
Yeah. Sorry. But I mean, I think knowing my older son, I think he also would have those same values. So, but I think, I don't want them to be deadbeats where they,
Yeah.
I think they should be the man. I'm very much a believer in that. You should want to be the man and be able to provide for your family. But if your wife wants to work, then you should 100% support her that as well. And that men deserve respect too. I do believe that, when you take a girl out, you should pay.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that. And then I believe once you're dating, then it's shared finances.
Mm-hmm.
Like she might get coffee this time and he
Mm-hmm.
gets that. But when you're courting a girl, I believe in courting.
Mm-hmm.
I think you should open the door for her. I think you should walk on the outside of part of the sidewalk.
Still alive.
Chivalry should be alive. I'm a big
Yeah.
believer in that. And if you're going to break up with a girl, I think it should be face to face.
You know what's weird though is I don't feel like this was a thing when we were younger, but maybe it was. But now you hear all these stories of girls just getting with guys just so they'll keep buying them dinner type of thing. I don't feel like that was a whole trend when we were younger, right? There wasn't the social media.
I don't know.
Teaching girls how to game it as much. I don't know.
No, I'm sure social media has a whole, I mean, that's also the thing is be wary. Obviously, if you're interested in a girl, but make sure that her intentions, you're feeling the same good intentions from her and she's not just using you for free meals.
Yeah.
But I think guys, but don't assume she is right off the bat.
Yeah.
I keep seeing stuff on social media about, first of all, men paying, wanting to split the check the first date and they ask the girl out.
Yeah, that's crazy to me.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Or, feeling like making sure they're not going to be used. But then on the flip side, I do see young men that are like, no, I will take her out. I will pay. And I want my wife, if she wants to be home, I should be able to provide.
I can't imagine dating in this day and age.
No, I think social media, I can't even imagine, honestly. So, and I know we're going to have our older son on and we're going to talk about some of that. But no, I think that I think young men should be chivalrous, but also wary and conscious of not getting used. And that's a tricky one, you know? And like I said, want to support your wife, but as far as any, I can't think like for boy, like that's how I raise my boys.
Yeah.
I'm raising my boys. So if you're asking advice, however I'm raising my boys, it would be my advice, but more, and then for the girls. That's pretty much, I wish I would have had, I think if I had my dad in my life, I would have respected myself more and my energy and my space. I knew nothing of boundaries. I don't think our generation did or self-care, but I would have at least had someone in my corner.
Yeah.
A man. I would have had a man in my corner.
Yeah.
So I think that's so important. We've talked about that, but that's an interesting question.
In what sense?
Just what advice I would give to young people out there,
Well,
oh, wait, I thought of one.
We've reached the point where we're older now.
We are older. I thought about something else too, though. Don't be scared to get married and have children. I think that I think there's a lot of overthinking going on. If you think you've met your person, do it. And it's okay if you are financially struggling for a while. That's how we grew up. That's what you do in the start. And you work together and you figure it out. But there's a lot to be said for when you have children, it actually makes you be the better version of yourself. You rise to the occasion.
I don't totally disagree with you, but the only thing I would say is don't rush into marriage. Make sure you're friends with the person.
Oh, yeah.
That would be.
There
should be no ultimatums. We've talked about that.
No.
You don't do the ultimatum game. You don't have to rush in, but to your point, you don't have to go on the 10-year courtship either.
100%. So that's what I mean. I mean, if you've met your person and all that, I don't mean hurry up and go out and get, but if you think this is your person, go for it.
Take a chance.
Because, it's time. Relationships are supposed to evolve and keep growing. Even ours at 30 years, it's always evolving and growing.
You finally came around.
You don't want to become stagnant. So, I guess that's my story. And now here I am doing a podcast as a old person. I'm the old person now.
Well, it's funny. We used to be the young parents. Now we're the older parents.
Now we're the older parents. Yeah. So, but I'm happy to say, I actually can say I'm proud of myself. And that's really hard for me to say because I've been the hardest on myself my whole life. I'm proud for what I got through, and I'm proud of the family we've created, and also that I've been able to devote time to myself truly for the first time in my life over these last few years, and challenge myself and honored myself, so that's taking the time for me, which is something that does not come naturally.
All right, last question.
Yeah.
Just made me think of it. Do you have anything you want to accomplish in these? See, I don't think we're in the golden years yet.
No, not yet.
Like, I don't think you want to run a marathon. I don't think your body would let you.
No.
But is there something like that where you've written one book? Would you like to write another book, or do you have any big milestone types of things or one type of thing or whatever?
I would love to have more guests. Like, I want to continue to grow this podcast and have more and more guests on, because I'm so fascinated by people. I'm way more interested in people than celebrities.
Yeah.
I'm way more interested in authenticity than illusion and persona. So I would just like to get to know as many people as I can and hear their stories. That's something I'd like to accomplish. I've thought about writing another book. Yeah, so I've thought about that. And then physically, I really, really want to finally really focus on weight training in 2025, because I go back and forth with it. And I know, as a woman
trying to get muscles like me.
Yeah, and it was a woman in menopause, and I'm gonna do a menopause episode, but that's so important for my health.
Yeah,
and so I really want to focus on that. But I have to be honest, my greatest accomplishment is the kids and our 30-year marriage.
Yeah.
That's my legacy.
Yeah.
No matter what happens for the rest of my life, my legacy is our marriage and our 3 kids.
Yeah.
And there will never be anything in my life I'm more proud of than that. So in my mind, I'm like, everything else is like icing on the cake.
All right, last question. Since you brought up I was thinking longer term. Our daughter wants to run a marathon.
Yeah.
Those type of things. For 2025. Do you have any resolutions coming up? This will be released before the first of the year, or right around.
Really, really growing the podcast.
Okay.
2025 is really focusing on the podcast, growing the podcast, mainly because I want to talk to as many people as possible and reach as many people as possible.
Yeah.
So I'd say 2025 will be a big focus on the podcast. So that and weight training.
Yeah.
And you got me a weighted vest for Christmas. I'm excited to use that.
And I think the interesting thing about this podcast is we're not necessarily seeking commercial success.
Right.
It's the kind of the furthest thing from our minds in that sense. It's that connection to hear people's different stories.
And because I think that it will also reach others, and it could affect their lives positively.
Yeah.
And maybe help people feel seen and understood and not alone.
Yeah.
So that's it. But I also am so interested in hearing people's stories.
Yeah.
So that's the main thing. And I just have to say, for anyone watching, I am wearing a Miss Peaches hoodie. And I don't know if anyone knows who Miss Peaches is, but she is Dave Portnoy's dog. I didn't know a lot about Dave Portnoy before Miss Peaches. I knew he owned Barstool Sports, and I knew he did the pizza reviews, because he's done a couple in the town we live in.
Yeah.
And he helps small businesses by doing these reviews. And so I've always admired that about him. And he's a Gen Xer, and I love how he is so cut and dry and just says it how it is. I love that.
It's a Boston guy.
Yeah. But then he adopted Miss Peaches, and she is the most precious angel on earth. She's a pit bull, and she's joy and sweetness.
Does he have another dog now too?
And then after Miss Peaches, he adopted Pete the Beagle, who has worked. He seems to be the most perfect brother for her. They play all day. And for a beagle, beagles typically are runners. He doesn't seem to be a runner. Miss Peaches is the one who has tried to escape. And in all his houses, he's had to reinforce all his fencing so she doesn't go anywhere. But he's big into animal rescue, which you and I are.
That's what I was going to ask.
All about that.
Kind of a shtick in a sense now.
Yeah. I mean, you and I are big. All of our dogs are rescues through our lives, and we've had more. We've had 7 dogs total, and rescue is our favorite breed. And all the money from everything Miss Peaches. If you go to Barstool Sports, anything you buy from Miss Peaches or Pete the Beagle, every dollar goes towards rescues
Yeah.
around the country. He's raised over $1 million just from people buying hoodies. And so I love Miss Peaches. You should check her out on social media. But I'm just putting the plug out there because it helps animals, animal rescues. So
Does he donate to? Does he like pick a
yeah,
place randomly,
yeah,
or
yeah. Like there was one by us up in West Palm. He gave $25,000
what, the
to.
big dog rescue?
No, a different one.
Okay.
He gave $25,000 to them. But she's gotten the key to the city in Miami. Like
Yeah.
she is an angel. She's perfect. She's amazing. And I think I encourage everyone to go check out Miss Peaches on social media. And then if you want, the
Well,
hoodies are so cute.
The thing about Dave or Portnoy, it would be, I'm sure he doesn't have this huge overhead. If you give to United Way, 20% of your donations go into people that it's intended for, right?
Right.
If you buy the sweatshirt, it probably covers the cost and you get a sweatshirt out of it. But then I'm sure his overhead is not nearly as bureaucratic or administrative. So
Yeah.
probably your dollar goes further in reaching wherever it's intended
For
to go.
sure. No,
Yeah.
it says every dollar. So I had to say that just because it's for such a good cause. So, and I love my Miss Peaches hoodie. I got it for Christmas. She's a precious little baby.
All right, you got anything else? Or are we
No,
done?
that was it. So that's my
Miss
life
Peaches
story.
and Dave's charitable plug.
I have to. Animal rescue also is such a big part of my life, so I had to also bring that into this episode. But thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it was entertaining, and maybe it also some people could relate to some of the stuff I talked about. So thank you so much for listening. I
Cool.
appreciate it, and that's our first Gen X Speaks episode, and we will definitely be having more.
Nice job.
Thank you. The next time we talk to our listeners will be 2025. So we will see you next year.
Take care.
Bye.